And we are now live.
Good evening, everyone. Committee members, applicants, agents, members of the public. I now call the Committee of Adjustment meeting for March 4th to order. I'll just get through some kind of COVID-related protocol, and then we will get into our typical agenda where I'll read through some additional protocol more specific to the meeting format. So as this meeting is held in accordance, as this meeting is being held electronically due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I will go over some rules, procedures, as I just mentioned. So this meeting is being streamed live via City of Brantford YouTube account. All members of the committee will be muted upon entering the meeting and throughout when they are not speaking in order to reduce background noise. All web cameras for committee members shall be turned on throughout the meeting. If a member needs to leave their seat, please leave the camera on so we can recognize that you are away. Staff will be requested to join the video on screen should they need to answer any questions of any members. Movers and seconders of motion shall be indicated by raising your hand on the camera, and the chair will call you out for who the mover and seconder are. All members of the committee participating via online video conference will vote by a physical show of hands, and we will be recording that vote by the clerk. Applicants, agents, owners, and delegations are participating via Zoom or by phone accordingly. All persons wishing to speak to the items on the agenda were required to register by 9 a.m. Any delegations received in written format have been provided to the members of the committee and will form part of the meeting record. In the event that of a connection or service interruption that affects quorum of the Committee of Adjustment, we may recess the meeting up to 15 minutes in order to allow the committee to regain quorum. If quorum is not achieved, the meeting will be adjourned. So at this time, I'll ask the clerk to take attendance.
Okay, Tara Gaskin has sent her regrets. Greg Kempa?
Present.
Lee Reiner?
Present.
Dan Nemizniak?
Present.
Michael Bodner?
I'm present.
Virginia Kershaw?
Here.
And Christina Brooks?
Present.
Perfect.
So at this time, all the committee members have received the agenda package, and I'll just ask if any members have any conflict of interest this evening for any items. Seeing none. So now I'll just get into kind of our typical protocol. So this meeting is held in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss minor variance, consent, and severance applications, and to give members of the public the opportunity to ask questions, express concerns, or provide comment either in support or against the application. Each hearing is generally dealt with in accordance with the provision or with the order that they appear on the agenda. In the event that the hearing is not completed on this date, it will be adjourned to a later date, at which time the committee may hear further submissions. At the conclusion of each hearing, this committee will make a decision on each application. The names of those individuals who speak on any item tonight will appear within the meeting minutes. Anyone wishing to receive further notice of any hearing, including a copy of the committee's decision, please contact the city's clerk department. Minor variance decisions are final if there are no appeals 20 days after the committee's decision, and consent decisions are final if there are no appeals 20 days after the notice of the decision has been issued. So tonight's order of delegations will be as follows. We will have the applicant or agent for each application join us to present the details of their report, of their application, and then we'll have staff join us to present the details of the report followed by the staff recommendation. Once staff have had a chance to present the recommendation and staff and the committee members have had an opportunity to ask questions of clarification, we will open the meeting to members of the public who have registered to speak. We do have a number of participants with us this evening who we will be hearing from, and we have also received a number of letters for consideration via email ahead of this meeting. So that will be the opportunity for the members of the public to voice their concerns, and we will have an opportunity for the committee to answer any questions or to ask any questions of clarification. While the public delegations are speaking, we'll ask that the applicants or agents just take notes of any questions, and then we will have the applicants or staff address any questions at the end of the public session. So once the public portion is closed, we have one more opportunity for any questions from the committee, questions of clarification, just to ensure that the committee is comfortable with the decision or the motion that's going to be put on the floor. So with that being said, get into our agenda. Our first item on the agenda is a consent or severance application and a minor variance application. So B4 2021 and A12 2020 or 2021 for 9 Broad Street and 130 Terrace Hill Street. The applicant, J.H. Cahoon Engineering, Mr. Phillips, and Mr. Zavarella, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is an application that is being made by Carriage View Homes to reestablish a lot at municipal number 9 Broad Street, which has merged with 130 Terrace Hill Street at this time. I believe back in the 70s, these were originally, this lot was originally severed. I'm not exactly sure of the mechanism that they've merged in title, but they've merged in title with 130 Terrace Hill. The consent application is to create a lot that's in conformance with the zoning bylaw, both frontage and area, and is consistent with lots in the neighborhood. The site is located at the corner of Terrace Hill and Broad Street in proximity to Brantford General Hospital, and it is a challenging lot due to the topography on the lot. As with any severance, it is subject to site plan approval, where all the technical requirements with respect to slope stability, construction of retaining walls will be vented through city staff. The second application has to do with a technical matter with respect to the front set of stairs. The elevations that we had submitted with the application, and due to the sort of topography of the lot, there's a need for a set of stairs, and it does encroach into the front yard. We've read the planning staff report and are fully supportive of the recommendations enclosed within it. We've also read the letters that were provided by the neighborhood, and I can just point out that there is certainly a process to go through, and some of the conditions are very specific to the topography of this lot. With me tonight is Mr. Zavarella. He's here to answer any questions, as am I, from the committee and or the public. And that sums up my presentation at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Phillips. This time I'll ask if the committee have any questions of the applicant or agent. Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair, I just have a couple of questions for Mr. Zavarella or Mr. Cahoon. Assuming that a retaining wall would be required, who would pay for the retaining wall? And also, who would maintain it going forward in the future?
Thank you for the question. The there are retaining walls required and just because of the topography of the site, they range in height from probably about less than 4 feet to probably 6 feet. They will all be established on the new lot. They will all be maintained by the lot owner, and all costs associated with that will be borne by the new homeowner.
Very good. Any additional questions from the committee to the applicants at this time? Seeing none, we will have staff join us to present the staff report and the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sean House. I'm a planner in the Community Development Department here at the City of Brantford. We've received a consent and minor variance application for 9 Broad Street, 130 Terrace Hill Street. These lands are located at the southeast corner of that intersection and are designated residential area, low density, in the official plan and residential conversion in the zoning bylaw. The single detached dwelling currently occupies the retained lands, and the proposed severed lands are currently vacant. They contain multiple trees and slope towards both Usher Street and Broad Street. The applicants indicated that the properties were merged on title due to them being held in the same ownership, and the applicants proposing to sever the previously existing lot at 9 Broad Street, and this would facilitate their plans to construct a semi-detached dwelling. To facilitate the development, the applicant's seeking relief to permit an exterior staircase that would project up to a maximum of 3 meters into the front yard. These applications were circulated to all applicable departments and agencies. Engineering services have requested some conditions as they relate to a grading and drainage plan. One will need it to be provided to their satisfaction as a condition of approval. If this is approved, if that grading or drainage plan indicates there will be any retaining wall that exceeds 1 meter in height, then they'll also be asking for a geotechnical report for that. Notice of this meeting was sent out by personal mail to all property owners within 60 meters, as well as by posting a sign on both the retained lands and the severed lands. We've received about 6 letters in total from adjacent property owners, and their concerns relate to soil stability, the proposed retaining walls, drainage, the construction process, existing vegetation and wildlife in the area. The applicant has indicated that they are willing to work with the property owners, and I do acknowledge these concerns and address them in the staff report, but I'd like to go over them now as well. With respect to soil stability, retaining walls and drainage, as I mentioned, these will be subject to a very detailed review as a condition of approval. If this is approved, a building permit's actually required for some of these retaining walls that abut the driveway and the public right-of-way, for instance. So there will be further detailed review there. And to speak to Mr. Bodner's question about the upkeep of these retaining walls, there is a property standards bylaw that requires all retaining walls to be kept in good condition, repair, and safe and structurally sound condition as well. Regarding the construction process, adjacent property owners will need to provide permission to allow any construction or entry onto their property. We'll be requiring an arborist report as a requirement of site plan control to ensure there are no significant tree species on the property. We'd also received 2 letters suggesting that a pre-construction engineering survey be conducted of their own properties as a condition of approval. I did consult with my engineering department about this, and they'd advised that if one's warranted through their detailed review of the grading and drainage plan, they would prefer to make that a condition of site plan control, but it's not, they've not yet determined if a pre-construction survey would be required. So I would like to just speak to the lot creation application, the severance. So to recommend approval for this type of application, the committee must have regard for section 5124 of the Planning Act. These criteria include if the plan conforms to the official plan, dimensions and shapes of the proposed lot, the adequacy of utilities and municipal services. The official plan also lists criteria, such as if the severance is for the purpose of infilling, if no extension or improvement of municipal services are required, and if there's frontage on a public road. This consent application is for the purpose of recreating a previously existing lot. The retained parcel can adequately accommodate the existing single detached dwelling, and the severed parcel does meet all the minimum lot dimension regulations of the RC zone when it comes to lot area or lot width. Again, the site plan control process will allow staff to have a detailed review of the functionality of the site, placement of driveways, buildings, as well as some of the technical concerns that have been brought up. I'll now speak a little more to the minor variance that was applied for. For that to be approved, the committee must be satisfied that the 4 tests of section 45(1) of the Planning Act have been met. Minor variance must maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw, be desirable for the appropriate development of the land, it be minor in nature. It's the opinion of the planning staff that the variance is minor in nature. The projection of the front staircase isn't expected to have any adverse impacts on adjacent properties or restrict development. It's desirable for the appropriate development of the land, as the exterior staircases are needed to provide access to the dwelling, given the grading of the site. And it also meets the intent of the zoning bylaw and official plan by facilitating the development of a dwelling that will contribute to the diverse mix of housing in the neighborhood. It's not going to impede the projection of the stairway. It's not going to impede vehicular access to the site, and it will still, maintain adequate room for parking, landscaping, those types of considerations. So to conclude, it's our opinion that the variance does meet the 4 tests of the Act, and we recommend that applications B04 2021 and A12 2021 be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions from the committee to staff? I see no hands, so at this point we can open up the public portion of the meeting, and I do have 3 registered, maybe even a 4th. I'll have clerks confirm at the time, but I'll go in order of the list that I have here. So the first member registered is Dan Lazaros.
Hi, it's Emma, the clerk speaking. So Mr. Lazaros is attending only via phone, so we won't see him, but we did test his mic and he is working. So Mr. Lazaros, if you are there, can you please respond?
Hello?
Hi, perfect. We can hear you now. So
Okay.
through the chair, I do have some photos that I will be displaying for him as well.
Okay. So I'm good to go?
Yep, Dan, the floor is yours, and and we will be seeing your images shortly, I'm sure.
Okay. Well, perhaps a number of the things I want to talk about are for maybe the site planning stage of it. But if Emma, if you want to put up picture number 1.
Okay.
Okay. My name's Dan Lazarus. I live at 11 Broad Street, next door to the proposed building site. I've been here since 1986. I'm retired. I live alone, and I'm very concerned about the impact that this proposal is going to have on my property, as well as that of my neighbors and my neighborhood. I can't. I've got YouTube up. I can't see the picture, but I'm assuming everybody else can. Picture number 1 should be a picture of my backyard in the early summer. I put a lot of hard work into my yard. It's a very nice spot. Anybody who sees it offers me compliments. My sister says it's like living in a park. John Utley's been here, and he can testify to the hard work that I put in. And it's a very private spot. Joining the back of my yard or the east end, it's all trees, pretty much untouched, all the way back to Yates Castle at Usher and Sydenham. Next door to me on the south side is 15 Broad Street, which is approximately 125 years old, and up until 1979 was actually 111 Usher Street. Since the house faces Usher, it's the rear of the house that faces my lot, and there's just one little tiny window there covered by cedar trees. And then, of course, on the north side is number 9 Broad Street. A very irregular lot, undeveloped, with great disparities in elevation and left wild, home to many birds and animals. Ironically, Mr. Polillo, the previous owner, commented to me many times that he had purchased the property solely to prevent development and protect his house at 130 Terrace Hill. As you can imagine, I enjoy this space immensely. Nothing better than a quiet summer afternoon sitting on my deck reading a good book, feeding the squirrels, blue jays, cardinals, chipmunks, whatever else is around. And I would expect that this yard of mine is one of the greatest selling features of my property. This proposed development is just going to completely destroy it. Not to mention all of the other dangers and damages this development's going to cause. I'm a layman with absolutely no development experience, but even I can see numerous areas of potential danger and damages that this proposal is going to cause if it goes forth. I'm sure that many I fail to recognize, but I expect the city, with its vast knowledge and experience, to protect me from these potential devastating impacts. I don't know anything about developments, and I see that 2 of my neighbors will be requesting engineering reports, which were referred to earlier. I'd like to request one as well. I'd also expect the city to help protect me and order any other protective measures that might normally be required. I've met with Mr. Zavarella a few times. Really nice guy. Every time we meet, he says, "Don't worry, Dan, it'll look nice. We'll take care of you, assume responsibility for all damages, but we'll need your cooperation." And what I hear is that he knows he can't develop this property without causing damage to me and expects that I'm going to be okay with it. I recognize his right to make a living and don't begrudge that, but it shouldn't be at my cost. This is much more than just a not in my backyard syndrome. Emma, if you could put up picture number 2.
I can do that.
This is taken from the front. Sorry, Emma?
No, that's okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. This is taken from the front on Broad Street. You'll see my house and driveway on the right side, number 9 on the left, and a cinder block wall separating the properties running along the property line just on the 9 Broad Street side of the line. I don't think this picture does it justice, but you can also see the differences in elevation between 9 and my lot, as well as the differences in elevation that exist on 9 Broad, being at road level at the front, then rising quickly at the north and east ends. And faintly up at the very top, you can see the garage of 130 Terrace Hill. The proposal calls for the cinder block wall to be removed and replaced. And I can't fathom any possible way of that occurring without disrupting the use of my driveway and potential damages to my drive or to my shed at the end of the drive. I don't know how many courses of cinder block are buried, but I would guess there are 2 or 3 underground, and at the very least, the edge of my driveway is going to crumble when they remove these blocks. Approval of this proposal would have to assume guaranteed damage to my property. Proposal also calls for a 3-story building to be built starting approximately next to where my car is parked and extending approximately 15 feet past the rear of my house. The main floor starting just below my roof line. Now, have a look at this picture and try to imagine a 30-foot tall building looming over my property 4, 5, 6 feet from the property line. It might as well be an apartment building or the CN Tower for that fact. Such a large building gives the tenants the ability to see in my entire property, and I'd expect they'd also be able to see in the windows on both the front and the rear of my house. The roof is sloping towards my driveway. When we get a heavy snow or ice storm and the snow slides off the roof, falls 30 feet and lands on top of my car, and then what? And with this 30-foot tall building and 60 feet long, it's going to be a great big wind tunnel running down along the side of my house into my driveway. If you could switch to picture 3, Emma, which is taken along the property line facing east. Proposal calls for changing the elevation of 9 Broad and the installation of a retaining wall. This would require the removal of all the trees, a lot of digging, and removal of soil. I would expect that the roots of those trees is what's holding everything together, and these roots absolutely must extend into my yard. These aren't saplings. I've been here for 35 years, and those trees have been there a lot longer than me. I'm not a professional. I don't know what damage is going to occur when these trees are felled, but certainly when the stumps are removed, my rockery, all my plants will be displaced, and then there's nothing left to hold everything together. I don't know how this is going to impact the cinder block wall that's on my property running perpendicular to the property line behind my shed. But I'm sure a bunch of that's going to collapse too. Picture number 4 gives a better idea of the size of the trees to be removed that are situated right along the property line. And picture number 5 is another one of the property line taken from the top of the hill near the rear of my property facing west towards Broad, which also shows the trees that need to be removed and a better idea of the elevation disparities. I know for a fact that a bunch of those roots are underneath my shed and under my driveway, and it's just going to chew it all up. Picture number 6, Emma, shows the rear of my house facing north towards number 9 Broad Street. This also shows the trees that need to be removed and the elevation disparities. Proposal calls for the house to be built with approximately 1/3 of its length extending beyond the rear of my house. Now, again, if you can see this picture, try to imagine a 30-foot tall house looming over my property for the entirety of this picture. Any privacy that I currently enjoy will be destroyed with no potential remedies. They'll be able to look out their windows, look directly into my living room, my dining room, my kitchen. There's no way I can build a 30-foot tall privacy fence. Picture number 7, Emma, taken from the top of the hill from my yard facing north across 9 Broad to Helena Gunn's property at 128 Terrace Hill. The proposal calls for this area to be lowered 6 or 8 feet and leveled off with retaining walls to be extended and encompass this area. They've suggested they'd like to level the top portion of my lot to be consistent with the finished elevation of 9 Broad and extending the retaining wall approximately 10 feet along the rear of my property. Would I then be responsible for the portion of the retaining wall that's on my property? And if not, am I giving up a portion of my lot or unlimited access forever? There'd also be a need to encroach on both Helena and Tyler's properties to tie in the retaining wall, which would extend the entire length of the north and east sides of Broad, if not almost the entire length of the south side along my property. Again, I'm a layman. I have no experience, but I got grave concerns regarding the movement of all this dirt, as well as the efficiency and longevity of the retaining wall. This area is all sand. In fact, it was a sand pit until 1954, operated by the Schultz Sand Company. I'm very fearful of this. What if it all collapses? Is Helena and Tyler's houses going to end up in my basement? And how much damage is the vibrations of all the heavy equipment going to do to my foundation or anything else part of my house? Is my yard going to collapse? As I understand it, there's supposed to be a 1-year warranty on the retaining wall, but what happens if it needs repair in 5 and 10 years? Even if it has a 99-year guarantee, what happens if the company holding the guarantee closes? Long and short, this proposal carries many, many areas of potential danger and likely many unpredictable areas of danger. In fact, there are some areas guaranteed to do damage. It will affect probably 8 or 10 feet of the entire area outside of the property line of 9 Broad, regardless of whether the neighbors give permission or not. Proposed building doesn't fit in with the general neighborhood, being single detached houses, and would be more than 4 times the size of my house. I expect the city to protect my neighbors and me and not allow this proposal to continue. I don't begrudge anybody's ability to make a living, but this project appears to be far too aggressive for both the neighborhood and the unusualness of the lot involved. My preference would be for the lot to remain attached to 130 Terrace Hill as was intended by the Palillos, but obviously I'm not in favor of granting the variance as the building called for in the proposal is just not a good fit for this property. Thank you for your time and allowing me the opportunity to express my concerns.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for sharing the photos. It certainly gives us a different perspective when it comes from yourself, someone who's been there for as long as you have. Very helpful.
Thank you.
Any questions from the committee to the resident?
Millions of them. I'm very worried. I'm not professional. I don't know what questions to ask, and I'm relying on the city to take care of me.
Yep, absolutely. At this time, I'm just asking if the committee has any questions of clarification of you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Not a problem. I don't see any hands from the committee. So I assume if there's any new concerns that have been brought up, we can certainly have the applicant and the agent address those once we've gone through all of the public presentations this evening. So we will certainly have the applicants respond to anything that can be addressed at this time. So I just wanted to confirm no questions of clarification from the committee to Dan. Okay, so seeing none, Dan, thank you again for your time. Sit tight, and we will hear from 2 other residents. The next one on my list is Tyler. There's Tyler, we can see you. Now that Dan's gone through his portion, you have a good idea of kind of how this works. So I'll just ask if you state your names and address, and now's your opportunity to voice your concerns.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the committee and other relevant stakeholders for making the time to be here and for this nice, clear process. I'm Tyler. This is my girlfriend, Landon. We live at 124 Terrace Hill. We are first-time home buyers here. We just came up on 1 year ago. We bought this property. When we bought this property, we were both commuting. I was commuting to Kitchener and London and Toronto, Landon was and is still commuting to Guelph. We could have lived anywhere. We chose Brantford. We chose this neighborhood, and we chose this house on Terrace Hill. I just want to paint a picture here of what this means to us and why I'm here and why I'm passionate about this issue. So I am opposed to the severance, not necessarily because I am opposed to there being two different parcels, but this is my first step in opposing the entire development. I am opposed to the development because the parcel is unsuitable to be built on based on the impact to the adjoining properties. Trying to keep this as clear and as concise as I can. I, like my neighbor Dan, have a lot of issues, a lot of fears, a lot of kind of swirling thoughts as a layman around this development and this process. But for your benefit, I am trying to keep this as concise as possible. I have sorted my concerns into 4 main points. Some of them have already been touched upon. None of them have been satisfied. First, retaining walls. I'm worried about the liability, the feasibility, as well as protecting and not disturbing my existing back southerly retaining wall. I'm the proud owner of a couple of aging retaining walls, one of which I am very passionate about not disturbing, the other of which will probably need to be repaired, either by me or Mr. Zavarella and company. Number 2, trees, roots, and soil stability. That sounds like a great Saturday night, doesn't it? When the trees and the roots on Broad Street are removed, what does this mean for the soil stability in and around the 3 adjoining properties? Also, I think there's a good chance that more than 25% of the root structure within the drip line will be damaged. One of my walnut trees, it's a magnificent tree. It's probably around 100 years old. It's an important part of enjoyment of our backyard. It can't be replaced. It's important for us to preserve that tree. Number 3, existing structures. I've got a garage that's right on the property line in the corner of the proposed development. I don't see how we can put a retaining wall up and pin back. I don't see how the sand's not going to fall away. I think the integrity of that structure is going to be compromised. I'm a little bit worried about my historic foundation on my home too. It's a 135-year-old home. I'm worried about piling. I'm worried about heavy equipment. And I would love I will demand an engineering report, because I don't have the technical knowledge or training to be able to do a clear before and after to make sure that no damages have taken place. Finally, and this is an overarching theme, and this might be the most important thing, I'm worried about the financial and the legal risk. There's a lot of responsibilities that come with buying your first home. This is not normal. This doesn't happen to most first-time home buyers. It is so hard to get into the market, and you think you've done it, and then they lay this on you. Here's what I'm worried about. You guys can push all this back on me so easily. You can say, this is all going to be addressed during the site planning or the site control process. You're going to come to an agreement, Mr. Corpy. You're going to come to an agreement with the builder, and all of these concerns are going to be addressed. But in the real world, here's how this breaks down. Let's say something goes wrong that is named in that agreement. There is no guarantee that it is going to be remedied to my satisfaction. Now, let's say something goes wrong, an unknown unknown, if you will, that's not covered in that agreement, then I'm really in for it. Anybody, stakeholder or committee or city clerk that's been to court knows what I'm talking about. That magic spot where 3/4 of the way through the dispute and I've retained counsel for 3 months, it just becomes quicker to hire Mr. Phillips to build me a new retaining wall. The legal and financial risk that this puts me and my family and our new home in will make it very difficult for me to ever accept or recommend that this development go forward. I urge the council to deny this severance. Now, before the end of this meeting, I'd like to ask Mr. Phillips some questions, but for now, that's all I've got.
Tyler, again, thank you. Thank you for your written response as well as your presentation. Now would be a really good opportunity. Now would be your opportunity to ask those questions. And then again, Mr. Phillips and Mr. Zavarella can provide a response once we've finished up the public portion.
Great. So, Mr. Phillips, nice to see you again. Thanks for being part of this meeting. You're an important stakeholder, maybe the most important stakeholder, if you ask me. I'd like to know if you've got a plan for my back southerly retaining wall. It's old, but it ain't out. It shouldn't be disturbed. You know that. Are you planning on tying into it?
Yeah, we won't have Mr. Phillips respond, but we'll have you ask your next question.
Sure. I appreciate you talking about the liability of the retaining wall. That's very important to me. I don't ever want to be liable for it. And whoever I sell this house to in 25 years, I don't want them to be liable for it either. That's the kind of community member I am. I want a 99-year warranty on it. I've heard that's unprecedented, impossible. That's what I'm planning for. I'm thinking about my community 99 years into the future. And I would be shocked if the city planning department isn't thinking about our beautiful city that way too. So I guess my question, that wasn't very concise. What kind of warranty am I going to get on this? Can I get my 99 years? Can I get it from the city? Can I get it from Cahoon? Can I get it from Zavarella? I wonder how I'm going to get that. That's it. That's my last one.
Two big ones. Okay, perfect. That really helps. That certainly helps narrow it down for to get a response. We want to make sure that we're able to answer any questions that we can answer this evening, whether it be through the committee or through staff or the applicants or agents. Good. Anything else, Tyler?
No, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. So the next resident I have on my list is Helena. Oh, Greg's waving his finger at me again. Questions of clarification to Mr. Tyler.
If you don't mind, thank you, Mr. Chair. Tyler, can you give me some idea of both the slope on the back of your property from, I guess it would be west to east, and the retaining wall that you're speaking of is, I imagine it is on the west side of the garage?
Yeah, so there's two retaining walls. The largest one is on the southern section of my backyard. So imagine my frontage on Terrace Hill and then straight back to the, like, running along the train station. I've got about a
Apparently the dog has control of your internet.
Yeah, Tyler appears to be frozen.
He's chasing the dog.
Yeah. We'll give him a moment. Emma, our clerk, if we lose Tyler and we get him back, we'll certainly welcome him back if the committee is okay with that, to continue answering any questions from the committee. I think that would only be fair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So if we don't get him back by now, perhaps we can bring Helena forward.
Absolutely.
Okay.
She's on her way in right now.
Perfect. Oh.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Hey, so I'm in the same room as Helena. She's sitting across from me. So I can answer a question if you want. It's a little unorthodox, but
I was gonna say that guy looks a lot like Tyler.
Hey, I appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
So Tyler, you heard my my plan for when you came back. We were going to invite you back, but you're here. So just so we can backtrack a little bit, Greg, if you wanted to just rephrase your question so that we can kind of catch up to where we left off.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Tyler, what I was trying to get at is give me some feel for the slope from the east side to the west side of the property, and the retaining wall you spoke of, does it run along the western boundary or the southern boundary of the property? And then thirdly, the height of that wall.
Okay, so the western boundary is less than 1 meter. There's probably a slope of 5 feet if I had to guess on that one. I also have another retaining wall that runs on my southerly border of my property. That one, the slope is probably from east to west. From east to west, that one is probably 2 feet. And the highest point of that wall is probably 7 feet. And they're both poured concrete. One is in rough shape. I'll need to replace it. And the other is in, probably 60%. And I'm happy to not disturb it.
Which is the one that gives you the concern that you think needs to be replaced?
The one that's on the westerly side, that one needs to go. Either I need to get rid of it or Umbrella and Co will be getting rid of it. And I have no contest to that. If they're going to be building, I'll get it out of there. They can get it out of there. It's the big one at the back, the one that's 7 or 8 feet. I am very, very concerned that how they would tie into that without knocking it over or disturbing it. I don't know if it's possible. And I don't want to be on the hook to put up a new one for whatever it's going to cost me, tens of thousands of dollars, because it's fine the way it is. It's not, it's serving its original purpose as long as we don't mess with it. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Helena,
Yes.
you're up.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi. Well, thank you very much. Again.
Before you get into your comments or questions, concerns, just provide us with your address so we can have an idea of where you're coming from.
I'm at 126 Terrace Hill, so I'm adjoining the 130 property. So my back garden is half the length of 9 Broad Street, the back half of Broad Street. Is Emma still there?
Yeah, yes, I am.
Okay. Emma, can you put up one of the photographs? I didn't number them. I was told I was supposed to number them and I completely forgot. Quick, put a photograph up and I'll explain what's going on. Pick one.
Sure. One moment, please.
Thank you very much. So I bought this property solely when I walked in that back garden. That is why I bought this property. I wanted peace and quiet, which I get actually on Terrace Hill, believe it or not. This is going to take it all away. Mr. Zavarelli has been very transparent and very nice with us, explaining that he will take care of stuff. But as I said to Mr. Zavarelli, if somebody's going to build a huge apartment building in the back of you wouldn't like it either. So we are going to do what we want. So in this whole of this picture here, everything you see there, gone. So the fence will be gone. Apparently my pergola is going to have to come down because the ties for the retaining wall that Mr. Zavarella wants to put in is going approximately 6 to 12 feet into the back of my garden to hold up said retaining wall, which I'm going to ask Mr. Phillips how high that retaining wall actually is going to be from the basement of the house to the top of my garden. Everything you see there, the trees, everything gone. If you can show the next one, that would be lovely. It'll probably be a quick photo. Oh, am I out now? Am I in or am I out?
You're in. You're there.
Oh, I'm so not techie, everybody. Okay, so what you see here is my house is on the left, and that's Frank and Jean's old house on the right. That's 130 Terrace Hill. The little red tree that you see from front of my shed will be there. Everything else that you see there, the trees and everything, gone. That will be a big house right up to there. All gone. If you could show the next picture, please. Thank you, Emma. That's one of my sunset shots. That will be gone. That will be house in most of that. Can you show the last picture, please, Emma? Thank you. All gone. All that green that you see there at the back of my garden is gone. And the house that is going to be built will be higher than the actual trees in the middle of that picture. That's my privacy, my peace, and my serenity. And I understand Mr. Zavarella is a businessman and a construction man. And I understand that he wants to build a house. And as I've said to him, and all three of the houses that are being affected, we don't want it. We will work with him, absolutely, if you put this through, because we actually don't have a choice. But we don't want this to go through. We do not want the severance to go through. We really don't. I do have a question for Mr. Phillips, if I'm allowed.
You're absolutely allowed. Now's your time.
Thank you. I don't know how this works, so I just go ahead and ask the question. Okay, so here's a question I have to ask. Can you tell me what the grade change is between the top of the retaining wall and the basement finished floor? Because that will be the height of the retaining wall. And how much ties do they have to put in to keep this wall up? And if the ties are coming in up to 10 feet, possibly even 12, because we're not sure at this moment, I understand that the new property owners will be responsible for that. But if something starts going wrong and that starts pulling out my back garden, are they still responsible for that? Or is Mr. Zavarella's construction company responsible for that? Or is the architect responsible for that? Can somebody please tell me?
Good question.
Thank you.
Anything else at this point?
For now, no, that is my biggest fear right now, is that when they start pulling out all the trees, they're going to start pulling out all the, I've been told I'm going to lose up to 6 feet of my back garden. Mr. Zavarella has been very kind and said, of course, he will refix it and make it nice and do whatever. But if there's going to be ties coming into my back garden, I'm not going to be able to plant trees there, which is what I wanted. And I'm not sure what the spacing is between the ties. So the trees that I wanted to hide the house that is going to be put into my back garden, basically, and I lose everything with my view, I understand that my property value will not change. Unfortunately, the enjoyment of my property is going to be completely gone. So I wanted trees to be put up, but in what I found out now is if the ties come in, and I don't know how far away they're separated, because he wants to drop so much of the land and take everything out, that it's going to, I don't know how it's going to be done. And that if I can't plant trees, I can't put a 20-foot, fence up, because apparently the bylaws is only 6 or 7 feet of fence that I can put up. Correct? I don't know.
We will find out.
Thank you.
Hopefully, at some point.
Thank you.
Any questions of clarification from the committee to Helena?
No, that was it. It was my 4 pictures. No, it's okay. Sorry.
Yep.
It's 4 before. Okay.
Questions of clarification from the committee to the residents?
They asked you.
Seeing none.
No.
Emma, do I have any other residents?
Yes, so we did have one. Her name was Karen Stewart, and she did register. I just didn't have her on our list. And I do have someone named Andrew Gunn in the waiting room who has raised his hand. I'm not sure. Helena would.
It's my brother. He wanted to be with me, but unfortunately he couldn't be, so he tried to join. So yeah,
okay,
that's my brother.
Okay, thank you. I will bring Karen Stewart in.
Thank you. Hi, Karen, welcome. You'll just have to unmute yourself. There you go. So, so now you have the benefit of watching a few of these resident presentations. The floor is yours. Just state your address and go along.
Hi, I'm Karen Stewart. I live at 127 Terrace Hill Street, and I'd like to thank the committee and the chair for allowing me an opportunity to speak. I actually live across the road from Helena and Tyler, but I stand with them in their objection to this new building on this property. Has any of you, we're all from Brantford, which is a lovely city. Have any of you walked up from Usher Street to the top of Terrace Hill on a summer day? Have you done that? Okay. If you have, and I'm sure most of you have at one point in your life, that is one steep slope. And not only does it slope sideways, this particular property slopes back so steeply. And you know, this area has been called Sand Hill. I moved here 20 years ago and people said, yeah, it's hard to grow grass up here. We live on Sand Hill. And they're right. Now, a lot of my neighbors have mentioned things that I was going to mention. But one thing concerns me is the size of the building going in on this particular lot. I understand the building itself is 4,000 square feet. And that, I believe, is about double, at least, of the buildings around it. And it may be within what's allowed, but it seems like such a big building. There's very little land on either side, and it needs to pull forward because of the big, huge slope in the backyard in order to make room for those stairs. So it doesn't seem to me that this is a particularly suitable piece of land for such a large building. The lot is there's such a dramatic slope, as you've heard from everybody else. When you stand and look at it, you can see the height difference. And my concern also is for those retaining walls and for who would be responsible for them and the impact on my neighbors. No one wants to be held responsible for a wall they didn't want. So basically, and also the building of the house, it's called a 2-story, but it looks like a 3 from the front. And I'm glad that Helena has asked for clarification on the height. Let me just check here. That's basically, I know I'm reiterating what my neighbors have said, but I do think it is worth mentioning. There's places where infilling makes a lot of sense in the city, and I'm not basically against infilling. I think it's a sensible plan, but some lots make sense. And this one has so many problems. It's such a challenging space with the sand, with the neighbors, with the huge slope, the retaining walls, the size of the building. I just hope that the council will take a good hard look at it, and we appreciate you looking at it. And I know Mr. Zaffarella is a good builder, but it is such a challenging spot. I have real severe concerns about it being in the neighborhood. So thank you very much. And that's all I have to say today. Thanks for considering what I'm saying.
Yeah. Thank you, Karen. Any questions from the committee to Karen? No questions. Okay, so just want to confirm again with Emma that we do not have any further residents to speak this evening.
No, we do not. That was all that was registered.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the public portion we will now close, but we're certainly going to have a response from Mr. Phillips and Mr. Zavarella, whoever is going to take the lead. There are some very valid concerns raised, and Karen said it, and it was in my head as well, is when we're creating any sort of development, we look at the perceived, impact on residents, and sometimes those residents the impact is perceived by property owners, and sometimes, or in this case, it's very technical concerns that are impacting a number of abutting parcels. Not saying that means this lot creation is unsupportable, but certainly there are some very valid concerns that need to be addressed, and plans that need to be in place, and plans for those plans if those plans don't work out. But at this time, I'll just let Mr. Phillips and Mr. Zavarella attempt to provide some confidence to the residents and maybe a plan forward, because this is certainly not the first time and the only time that they will be involved in discussions involving their own property lines and their respective retaining walls. So, Mr. Phillips, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. First of all, from a technical point of view, Mr. Zavarella has already engaged Englobe Inc. to do some work with the stability of the slope to ensure that there is not a failure in that sense. That'll include the review of the retaining wall design and the overall stability, both during construction and in the long term. As I mentioned before, the retaining walls are proposed to be on the lot itself, so the responsibility of this owner. In addition, the style of wall that we're visualizing is a gravity style of wall and not a tieback wall. So the concern about tiebacks going onto another property, I don't think that would ever get approved by the city through the site plan process, but I certainly can see a detailed review of that. Once that report is in place, there may be some changes to the size of the building in order to accommodate the retaining wall design and the overall slope stability. Along that, it would be our north boundary south of the residence. I believe that wall's about 6 feet height at its worst case. Certainly steps up to the back. It's a style of house that is built sort of into the hill. It's not going to end up a very flat lot. It does have a flat rear yard for the enjoyment of the new owners. And, I think the city staff and the conditions that they've imposed do provide that protection to the neighbors. There'll be an extensive review of those reports, including grading. And maybe I'll let Mr. Zavarella talk about the impact to the neighbors.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak here. There's a number of things that I did discuss with the homeowners, and maybe that I haven't discussed with my engineer in detail. I did talk to the neighbors about doing some tiebacks onto their properties. Obviously, it's a more cost effective for us to do the tiebacks. But if there is an issue with the tiebacks going onto their property, we have no problem doing a self-supporting wall. As compensation to the neighbors, we are providing a number of incentives to them, I guess you can say, and I prepared very detailed agreements for all the neighbors. I provided them with insurances, with them being named as an insured on my properties. We agreed to put the wall up. I agreed to install pressure treated fencing around all of their properties, including down the property line of 130 Terrace Hill. I have offered to rebuild the trellis for Helena. I've offered to install trees for Helena in the back to compensate for what's happening with the building being built. I've offered Tyler the construction of the new wall, and as well returning the wall along the back of his property so that he has a slope down to the rest of his property that he can't use right now. If he doesn't want that wall, that I have no problem with that. His wall is he says that he has two walls, but he actually has one wall that was broken, I believe, that is broken at the corner, and the westerly wall is falling onto my property. So it has to be replaced, and there's no way to tie into the wall that's there. That's why I offered to replace the wall across the back as well and install a slope to his lower area. As far as Dan goes, I also offered him that I would replace his driveway if it was damaged. I would replace any landscaping. I was going to construct a fence, and I put all this in agreements for all those neighbors. I've offered to pay for their legal fees. I don't know what more I can do. I'm trying to be a good developer, and I think I am a good developer. We've been in the city for building houses in Brantford for over 50 years. And I think we're known for good developments, and we don't walk away from a problem. I'm up for challenges. I like challenging sites. We try to look for challenging sites because we're good at it. We know what we're doing, and I'm not going to build something that's going to fall over. If I have to spend a little extra money on a wall, I'm going to spend the extra money on a wall. I'm not here to try and build something that's going to fall over. Hopefully that answers some of the questions for the neighbors. I do want to work with them. I hope they want to work with me. That was the feeling I got. Nobody wants development in their backyard, but the enjoyment that they're getting from that property is my property. They're enjoying my property, and I have the right to do what to develop my property how it should be developed. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Zavarella. Again, at this stage, for you to be this involved and to be that connected to the abutting residents is important, and it's something that we don't see often. Typically, the residents who have concerns are seeing the developer for the first time at these meetings, or perhaps the developer's not even present to answer any questions, and it's an agent acting on their behalf. So it's great that you're here and involved at this level. And of course, a lot of those agreements and discussions won't involve this committee, and that's something that you guys will deal with independently of any decision made tonight. So with that being said, I'll just ask if the committee has any questions of clarification to Mr. Phillips, Mr. Zavarella, or staff. Michael?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, I do have a couple of questions for either Mr. Cahoon or Mr. Zavarella. Can the developer redesign the building in such a way that it won't be so high? Or is that going to totally take away from the essence of what he wants to do on Broad Street?
It makes more sense to make it a 3-story building just because of the grade going from the lower level to the upper level. So the basement is actually the garage with a family room, and then you'll go to the main floor, and then you'll go out onto grade, just like a 2-story home. And it's no different than the 3-story buildings that Empire is building. There's one that was just built on Harris Ave, on the corner of Harris Ave and West Street. It's going to be very similar to that scenario. We're trying to make it as decorative as possible and make it give some curb appeal. And to lower it down 1 story would mean I would have to make the footprint bigger to allow a larger main floor area.
Okay. I do have another question for Mr. Zavarella through you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now you, as I understand, you own both 130 Terrace Hill Street and the 9 Broad Street proposed area, right?
Correct.
Okay, so what would happen if you tore down 130 Terrace Hill Street, built a development on Terrace Hill, and then terraced it down through the through the slope on Broad Street, going down Broad Street with that? But
Well,
there'd be
that-
extra cost there too, wouldn't you?
Well, for considering what I paid for the property, that wouldn't be economical.
Okay,
And when I bought the property, I originally bought the single lot on Broad Street from the Palilos. And unfortunately, the day after I bought the lot, Mr. Palilo passed away. And I think that had something to do with the properties merging together, because they own the two properties in two separate names. There were always two separate lots. And I think after he passed away, something happened with the title, because they both went into her name and they merged. And she still needed to sell the property, so I offered to buy the entire property and go through this process.
okay. Okay, and I just have another question too. I looked at that property. I was on Broad Street the other day, and it is quite a slope. Is there no feasible way that property could be, or that the developer could incorporate a terrace type of slope into that property to alleviate the overall slope of the back of the development from going south from Terrace Hill down through Broad Street? You couldn't, is there any way that could be terraced to prevent soil erosion?
Bob, if you want to speak to that, like, I think we are going to terrace. We're taking the garage down on 130 Terrace Hill and
Okay,
sloping the backyard of 130 Terrace Hill down to the new lot to eliminate some of the wall. Bob, maybe you can speak on that.
Actually, the design that we've tentatively come up with at this point involves a lot of regrading, including some regrading on 130 Terrace Hill to try to reduce the effect of the slope. There's a significant slope just going down Broad Street now. And, we tried to, through Dominic's kind of direction, used a house that sort of fits into the hill better than just creating like monster retaining walls around this. Like these retaining walls that we're talking about on this lot are probably 1.5, I'm going to say to 2 meters high max. And it's trying to use the existing grade as much as we can. We certainly appreciate the concerns about the slope stability, and as I mentioned, that's got to be reviewed both from a construction point of view and from a long-term stability point of view.
okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any more questions right now.
Any further questions from the committee? Clarification? I just have one, either to Bob or Mr. Zabarella. You mentioned certainly as you do some more detailed engineering work, the product proposed for the severed parcel may change. The application before us this evening is to essentially recreate that severed parcel that had merged. And how you described the merger is typical, and it's something I can't quite explain, and no one can quite explain it. There's no doesn't seem like there's an opportunity to avoid it. So we do see these types of applications often. So you're creating a severed parcel of 605 some odd square meters. Your proposal is for a semi. The semi-detached dwelling would be separated down the middle, perhaps through a future application. But as far as what we're dealing with this evening, we are creating one large parcel. And I would imagine at that point, you would be doing that detailed engineering work. And there's a chance that the product could change. Is there a chance that if the engineering doesn't allow for the semi, a single detached dwelling is feasible on this site?
I guess never say never. The preliminary work we've done, we believe that this can be put together, and that the appropriate conditions are in the recommendation, and that's why we support them.
Okay, fair enough. And can you just confirm that we will see a further application to sever each unit into separate ownership, or are you going to retain them for under one ownership for the time being?
I see Dominic kind of nodding his head saying that there'll be a future application.
Okay, so I would imagine once foundations have been set and the project's far enough along, we will be back.
There's, and I think you can appreciate there's work to be done to get that far.
Absolutely. Okay. Any further questions, final questions, clarification from the committee? Seeing none, I will ask the committee if they are prepared to move a motion. Virginia?
At least to get it on the floor, I'll move that application B04 2021 be approved with the conditions in Appendix A, and that application A12 2021 seeking relief be approved as per the recommendation. So I'll
Okay.
move the motion.
And a seconder? Greg? So the motion on the floor is as outlined in the staff report. Is there any discussion from the committee on that motion? Lee?
I just want to make some comments to the committee with regards to this, and the people in attendance as well. A lot of what Mr. Zavarillo spoke to is correct. And when we're looking at something like this is a common application that comes forward to us. The purview of this committee, the mandate of it is to look at the creation of the separation of these lots, essentially, and as well as the stairway in the front. Those are the two things that we're looking at. All of the other stuff that's been brought up, all of the issues, and no doubt this is an extremely complex application in terms of practically speaking what's going to happen with it. That's all addressed through a different process, through site plan control, essentially. That being said, we as a committee, if we're just looking at this basically based on, the separation of the lots and the issue of the stairs in front of the building, that's pretty basic. But knowing how this is going to affect and how complicated it is, we do at some point have to speak for the citizens and how it's going to impact them. I personally think that this is just too complex, and it's going to affect the surrounding area too much. I understand our mandate is very specific in scope, that it's just simply to look at the facts that pertain to, a new lot creation and a minor variance to allow some stairs. And based on that, it doesn't seem to be an issue. But when you take it into a broader context, the impact it's going to have. That being said, Mr. Zavarillo is correct in saying that people are enjoying his property and he has the right to develop it. And he does. He does have the right to develop it. But at the same time, we have to take into context, being neighborly and a community. And the fact that, we have a provincial policy and a master plan that focuses on infilling and putting as much livability into as small a space as possible. I understand that this is what we're moving towards, but perhaps, a project on a smaller scope, something not as high, maybe a single detached dwelling would be more suitable for this, as opposed to trying to pack as much as you can into this. I understand business and everything, but those are my comments for you. As such, I can't support the application. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Lee, for the comments. Any other discussion on the motion, Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to add a couple of comments here, and it's all related to my first question about who's going to be responsible for the retaining wall, for building the retaining wall, not just now, but going forward into the future. There's definitely potential for future damage through erosion to all the neighbors, not just the people that are going to live on number 9 Broad Street. There's the problem of encroachment onto the neighbor's property. And there's also going to be, as I said, the future cost of the retaining wall for the adjoining property owners. I won't be voting in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we've looked at these together as a group, some of us, for a while now. And I appreciate what Lee has said, and his comments have been consistent for all the time I've known him to serve on this committee. He and I haven't always agreed, and I know that there's been situations where we've sort of looked for reasons to approve or disapprove, and we've had a number of instances where the neighborhood has come together, and their appeal to us has been lost because the plan is the plan. But on this one, I think that Lee has a point on this one. As much as any other one, this is one where we're trying to shoehorn something in here. And while we can look at the specifics of this and where the lines are going to be, every once in a while there probably needs to be an exception. And the slope here, this is a tough project, and as I look down the road, I see this one as fraught with potential problems, and for that reason, I'll not be supporting it.
Thank you, Greg. Any other comments from the committee? Okay, seeing none. So again, the motion on the floor is approval of the application as outlined in the staff report. Approval of both consent and minor variance applications. We will have the clerks call the vote.
Okay, so all those in favor, please raise your hand and leave it raised until you hear your name called. Greg Kempa, Lee Reiner, Dan Amizniak, Michael Bodner, Virginia Kershaw, Christina Brooks. Okay. All those opposed, please raise your hand and leave your hand raised until you hear your name called. Greg Kempa, Michael Bodner, Lee Reiner, Christina Brooks, Michael Bodner. Okay, so that fails on a recorded vote of 4-3.
Virginia, are you satisfied with how that played out?
Absolutely not, Emma. There's only 6 of us here, for one thing. For the approvals, you called all of our names, which there was only 2 hands raised for.
Sorry, I was calling your name and then looking up to see if your name, if your hand was up.
I'm so confused.
Okay.
Maybe you can read back who you have for and against.
Okay, so I have Greg Kempa against. I have Lee Reiner against. Dan Amizniak, for. Michael Bodner against. Virginia Kershaw, for. Christina Brooks against. So sorry, that would be, it fails on recorded vote of 4-2.
Satisfied, Virginia? Okay, very good. Emma, any further steps?
No, there is no further steps.
Excellent. Okay. Just while I have the residents still on. Again, thank you for your voicing your concerns. Again, it's not as straightforward as some other applications, and your concerns are very valid, and that is clearly reflected in the decision. Perhaps there's other opportunities on this property, but for now, the motion has been defeated, and you will certainly be notified of the decision and any future applications that require consent or rezoning or minor variance on this property. Again, thank you. Moving on.
Sorry, through the chair. It is Emma, the clerk. So now that it has failed, we do have to put the motion on the floor for the reasons why it has failed.
Do I have a committee member comfortable enough framing some wording? Michael?
Okay, so as I understand it, I don't have to make another motion. I just have to say to give my input as to why I voted against it. Okay, so the first one would be the potential for future damage through erosion to the neighbor's properties, in addition to number 9 Broad Street. Number 2 would be the encroachment to the neighbor's property surrounding number 9 Broad Street. Am I going too fast, Emma?
Nope, I'm keeping up.
Okay, and the future cost of the retaining wall for the adjoining property owners would become the responsibility of the adjoining property owners. And that, as it relates to my first question as to of the developer, who would be responsible for the retaining wall.
I was going to also ask if any other committee members have anything to add. Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would add that the development is not in keeping with the neighborhood or the geography and topography of the area.
Any other additions for reasons for refusal? Lee?
I'm essentially going to say the same thing as Greg, Mr. Chair. You know, in terms of the 4 tests, I don't feel that it's minor in nature, and it fits. In terms of essentially what Greg said, it's not in keeping with the rest of the neighborhood, in my opinion.
Okay, fair enough. Chris?
Thank you. I would just like to say that my concerns are reiterated by the other 3 committee members that have voted against this as well. I'm a little concerned with the retaining walls, the erosion, the extreme grade separation, and the actual the fact that it would be a duplex as opposed to maybe a single family residence. It just seems like if it was a flat piece of property, I think that would have been different. But I think this is just a little too, it's just fraught with too many issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Emma, satisfied with that?
Yes, did we have a seconder? I know Michael Bodner was the mover.
Greg?
Okay, Michael Bodner, the mover, and Greg Kempa is the seconder, and that was the reasons for refusal, and I will now call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand and leave it raised until you hear your name called. Greg Kempa, Lee Reiner, Dan Nemesniak, Christina Brooks, Michael Bodner, Virginia Kershaw. All those opposed, please leave your hand and okay, Virginia Kershaw and Dan Nemesniak. That carries on a recorded vote of 4-2.
So just to clarify and maybe explain, we voted on the application and then we voted on the accepting or not accepting the reasons for that decision, correct?
That is correct.
Cool. It doesn't happen very often, so it gets confusing when we go off script. Okay, so that ends item number 1. Bit of a marathon here this evening, but certainly complicated applications deserve the time and consideration. So we will move on to the second item, and then perhaps we'll look into a few moments break. The next item on the agenda is a minor variance application A11-2021 for 3 Allwood Street. The applicants present this evening?
Yes, they are, and I'm bringing them in now.
John, Lisa, welcome. We can see you. If you want us to hear you, you'll have to unmute.
Okay, can you hear us?
Yeah, perfect. So just state your names are there for us to see, but just confirm your address, and then the floor is yours to present the details of your minor variance request.
My name is John Levinowich, and I'm here, the agent. The owner of the property is Lisa Levinowich. She's my daughter. She resides at 3 Allwood Street in Brantford. The purpose of this application is to request for a minor variance approval for an addition to convert an attached garage to a double garage. This property is zoned residential type 1B, zone R1B, which allows single detached dwellings. From the information section 7.3, on this lot is on a corner, and therefore the front line is on one street, and the rear part of the house is actually located on Waddington Street, and that's where the additional garage is going to be going. The issue here is that since this is a rear yard located on Waddington Street, the requirement is 7.5 meters. The year, she can't pronounce the word rear, is only 6.15 meters, and therefore a minor variance was required. From speaking with the engineering department, providing a variance of 1.8 away from the lot line would be sufficient. Here, we actually have 1.88 meters. Also, the grading and the drainage plan was provided for an engineering department. The engineering department has provided that the plan is sufficient and provides a solution. Also, the coverage lot max is 35%. Here, it only comes out to 19%. When we received a report from the planning department, we noticed that our application could be approved, and for that, we are thankful. We are now looking and hoping that committee would likewise do the same. What happened?
You're still there. You're still there.
Yep,
I'm still
you're
here.
still here.
You're still there.
Okay, so that's about what I gotta say in a nutshell. My daughter Lisa has a few words to say in regards to why this is being done. So I'll turn the mic to her and she'll say a few words.
Okay. My name is Lisa Levinowitz. I am an elementary school teacher here in Brantford, and I have been teaching for 18 years. Currently, I am a STEM teacher, teaching students from kindergarten all the way up to grade 8. I currently teach 31 different classes. Over the past 18 years, I have accumulated many resources. I currently have 2 rooms in my basement where I store my materials and all my resources. With this addition, I would be able to use one of the garages to conveniently store all my teaching supplies. Being a STEM teacher has me teaching at and traveling to different schools on a daily basis. At the end of each school day, I need to pack up all of my materials and take them home so that I have everything I need available for my next daily group of students. At home, I currently take the materials from my car up across my deck and then down into my basement. Since I have different classes each day, I have to figure out which materials I'll need and get them ready for the next day. No 2 days are ever the same, and I hardly ever teach the same grades back to back. In the morning, I bring out the new materials to my garage and I pack up my car with the materials needed for the day. This process is repeated each workday and all school year. With this addition, I would be able to store and prepare most of my teaching materials in a more convenient space. As well, this new addition would not only give me a bigger backyard to my side yard, but also add privacy to my property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can certainly appreciate those comments. My wife's a teacher and has too many resources.
Yes.
Any questions of clarification from the committee to the applicants? Seeing none, so we will have, I believe it's Sean again, planner on the file to present the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a minor variance application in for 3 Allwood Street. This property is located on the northwest corner of Allwood Street and Waddington Street. A single detached dwelling currently occupies the site. And the applicant's proposing to expand their existing attached garage into a double car garage. To facilitate the garage expansion, they require a variance to permit a rear yard of 1.8 meters, whereas 7.5 meters is required. As the applicant had stated, because this property is on a corner, the shortest property line fronting a street is technically considered the front yard in the zoning bylaw, which is the Allwood Street frontage in this instance, even though the building does face Waddington Street. Therefore, the yard where the garage is expanding is technically the rear yard, even though it does function as the side yard. Planning staff have reviewed the application and are satisfied that the 4 tests of the Planning Act have been met. The application is minor in nature. It's not expected to impact adjacent property. It's desirable and appropriate for the development and use of the land, as the functional rear yard, which is technically an interior side yard, but it acts as the rear yard that will still stay intact, and there will still be amenity space. Further, the proposed reduction to 1.88 meters will still allow for access into this backyard. Notice of this application was circulated to all property owners within 60 meters and no objections were received. To conclude, staff recommend that application A04 2021 be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions from the committee to staff? Seeing none, so at this time, I will open the public portion of the meeting.
Mr. Chair, Lee does have his hand raised.
Is that true, Lee? I wasn't sure. It was,
Yes,
like, the
Mr.
back,
Chair.
it was like the back of your hand. It was a little bit deceiving.
That's where my camera is set up. Through Mr. Chair, so just a couple of quick questions to staff. How do you determine what is the side yard on these corner properties? I'm always confused. And secondly, what is the setback requirement for a side yard? Is it 1.8 meters in Brantford? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll start with your first question. So what's considered the side yard? Well, there's an interior side yard and an exterior side yard. The interior side yard would be between this property and then the house next to it. on Allwood Street, and then the exterior side yard would be the frontage that fronts Waddington Street. And where they're proposing to expand the garage, you know, technically that's the rear yard, but we'd consider that, you know, functionally as a side yard. Minimum side yard for an interior on that side is 1 meter if a garage is present, which it is. So minimum side yard is 1 meter.
Lee, is that helpful?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm just the 1 meter side yard. I'm wondering what determines, in terms of planning, what determines what is a rear yard as opposed to a side yard? Is like, what is the actual determination? How do you determine that? Is it just based on some sort of measurement, or based on the way the house is faced, or based on the address, perhaps?
A couple ways you could look at it. Technically, through the zoning bylaw, it's whatever's opposite of the front yard. So in this case, front yard abuts Allwood Street, and so the opposite end of that lot is the rear yard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
It's always a bit tricky with those corner lots. Any further questions from the committee to staff? Okay, so seeing none, I will again open up the public portion of the hearing, and I'll just ask the clerk to confirm that there are no members of the public registered to speak to this item.
That is correct. There were no members registered.
Very good, thank you. So then I will formally close the public portion, and I will just ask if the committee has any further questions of clarification, either to staff again or to the applicants. And seeing none, I'll ask if the committee is prepared to move a motion. Lee?
To you, Mr. Chair, I would move that application A11 stroke 2021 be approved as indicated in the minutes.
I got a seconder. Greg? Any discussion on that motion? So again, just as outlined in the report. No discussion, so we will have the clerk call the vote.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand and leave it raised until you hear your name called. Greg Kempa, Virginia Kershaw, Michael Bodner, Lee Reiner, Christina Brooks, and Dan Nemesniak. That carries on a recorded vote of 6-0.
That one was a little more straightforward.
Yes, it was.
Excellent. Okay, just based on the fact that we've almost been going for two hours, just shy of 2 hours. If it's okay, I don't know what this is going to do to the live YouTube stream, but I would like to take a 3-minute break just to give us an opportunity to stretch our legs and maybe go grab a drink or something. So
Sure,
again, just leave your videos on, and then just mute yourself, and I'll see you all in 3 minutes. Very good. Well deserved. I see John's still here. John, you can leave. You're all done. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to staff or to our clerk, and they'll walk you through the next steps. Very good. Just waiting on Michael to return. Emma, I thought that was pretty nifty what you did there with the "We'll be back soon" sign.
No problem. We have to do it in other committees, so I was prepared.
Good. Okay, so third item on the agenda is a consent application for 150 Savannah Oaks. The agent is Kevin Muir, GSP Group. Is Kevin with us this evening? Kevin, welcome.
Welcome. Good evening.
Thanks for hanging around.
Not a problem.
I hope you're somewhere comfortable, somewhere you're familiar with.
Yeah, there's a screaming 4-year-old out the door, hasn't broken through yet, so we're good.
Okay, just state your name, your address, who you're with, who you're representing, and the details of your application.
Sure, certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kevin Muir. I'm a senior planner with GSP Group. GSP is the agent for Brantford Power, Inc. We were here, our company was probably here about this time last year for a small lot addition to the western end of this property. Now we're talking about the eastern end. Brantford Power, essentially, it's a fairly straightforward application. They've deemed the eastern 11 hectares of the 17 hectares in total as surplus to their needs, both presently and in the future. They're looking to essentially create a legally conveyable parcel for a potential conveyance, potential sale of the property down the road. At this time, there are no plans. There's no one in mind in terms of a sale of the property. So this is largely just to create that parcel to entertain the next sort of the marketing process for the potential disposition of the property. So we've had a chance to read the staff report. We agree completely with the analysis and the recommendations for approval, and certainly are satisfied with the conditions associated with them.
Very good. Any questions from the committee to the agent? Seeing none, we will have staff join us for the presentation of the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oops. Let me fast forward to this application. Received a severance application for 150 Savannah Oaks Drive. The subject lands are located at the end of a cul-de-sac on Tallgrass Court and extend along the north side of Savannah Oaks Drive. Lands are occupied by a large industrial office building with associated parking lot and a pond that's towards the eastern edge of the property. The subject lands are designated Business Park Industrial Area in the official plan and Zone Business Park Industrial Exception 5 in zoning bylaw 160-90. The applicant proposes to sever 11.1 hectares of land on the east side of the property. That's the side that currently contains a large pond. The existing office building, which is used by Brantford Power, will remain on the retained parcel, which has an area of 6 hectares. To recommend approval, the committee must have regard for Section 5124 of the Planning Act. In staff's opinion, the proposed lot does comply with local and provincial policies and regulations, while allowing for an increased opportunity for industrial uses on the severed parcel. Shown on this slide here, the applicant's shaded in yellow, what they consider to be the developable space of the severed lands. There's still adequate space to use a severed parcel to develop the property for an industrial use that is pursuant to the M3-5 zone provisions. And here's just a quick photo of what the severed lands look like. And we've circulated this application to all property owners within 60 meters, and we have not received any objections. So with that, I conclude that application B06 2021 should be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions from the committee to Sean, our planner? I see no hands from the committee. So at this point, I will open the public portion of the hearing and again, just confirm with our clerk that there are no members of the public registered to speak to this item.
That is correct. We did have one, Mike Pavia, but he has confirmed he's just here watching and he does not wish to speak.
Excellent. So with that being said, I will formally close the public portion and I will ask the committee if they have any questions of clarification to the applicant or to staff. And seeing none, I will ask if there's a motion to be put on the floor. Greg?
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to move that application B06/2021 be approved as shown in the minutes and with the conditions listed in Appendix A.
Thank you. We have a seconder. Virginia? Any discussion on that motion? So again, the motion is as outlined in the staff report. No discussion. We will have the clerk call the vote.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand and leave it raised until you hear your name called. Greg Kempa, Virginia Kershaw, Michael Bodner, Lee Reiner, Christina Brooks, Danny Muzniak. That carried unanimously.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you and good evening.
Next item, last item on the agenda is a consent application B7 and B8 for 179 Garden Ave. The agent registered is MHBC.
She is here, Stephanie. I'll just get you to turn your camera on. Okay, perfect.
Stephanie's here. Good evening. I will just ask you to state your name again, just like Kevin, who you're with, who you're representing, and the details of your request.
Sure. Thanks, Dan and members of committee. My name is Stephanie Murdich, and I'm a planner with MHBC. I'm here tonight on behalf of Lanka Contracting. I will be brief in my presentation. The application is fairly straightforward for two severance applications. The purpose being to create 3 separate industrial lots to allow for the future development of 3 separate industrial buildings. Each of the proposed buildings will be required to go through a future site plan application. The lands are designated in zone to permit general industrial uses. The current plans before you are conceptual and, like I mentioned, will be required for a site plan application in the future. We've reviewed the comments provided by the staff, various staff departments and agencies, as well as the staff report, and we're fully supportive of the staff recommendation and the conditions of the 2 consent applications. We've been working with staff and we continue to look forward to working with staff on the site plan applications, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee to the agent? I see no questions, so we will invite staff to present the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've received 2 consent applications here at 179 Garden Avenue. The lands are located on the east side of Garden Avenue, north of Elgin Street. Lands are currently vacant and designated general industrial in the official plan and zoned general industrial exception 40 in zoning bylaw 1690. The applications intend to sever the subject lands into 3 industrial lots, with each lot containing an industrial building and accessory office space. Again, to recommend approval, the committee must have regard for section 5124 of the Planning Act. The consent applications are for the purpose of creating 3 industrial lots within an existing employment area, and there are adequate municipal services. The proposed lots and widths are consistent with the regulations for the M2-40 zone, and the creation of these lots won't restrict the development of any adjacent areas. Any redevelopment of the site will be subject to all city requirements, including site plan control, as the applicant had mentioned, and this will allow staff for a more technical review of each proposal. Notice of the application was sent to all property owners within 60 meters. No objections were received. So to conclude, having regard to the Planning Act, staff recommend that applications B07 2021 and B08 2021 be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions from the committee to staff? No questions from the committee. So we will open the public portion of the hearing. And again, I'll just ask our clerk, Emma, to confirm that we've had no registered participants.
That is correct. No registered participants.
Excellent. So I will formally close the public portion. And I will ask again if the committee have any final questions of the applicant or staff. I see no hands, so we will have a motion on the floor from the committee. Virginia?
Yes, I move application B07 2021 be approved with the conditions in Appendix A1, and application B08 2021 be approved subject to the conditions noted in Appendix A2.
Excellent. And the seconder, Michael? Any discussion amongst the committee on that motion? Again, so the applications B7 and B8, the motion is as outlined in the staff report. No discussion? Seeing none, we will call the vote.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand and leave it raised until you hear your name called. Greg Kempa, Virginia Kershaw, Michael Bodner, Lee Reiner, Christina Brooks, and Dan Nemesniak. That carries unanimously.
There you go.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you. So it was a marathon to start and a sprint to the finish. That's good. Michael, question?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I noticed that when Mr. Lazaros was speaking on the phone, his phone number was shown on the screen. Was that publicly shown, or is that just shown for the members of the committee?
That's a good point. We'll have Emma, can you confirm?
I can confirm that it was shown when he was registered. He was advised that that could be made public.
Okay, good question.
I'm fine with that. I didn't know if we were breaching confidentiality for his phone number by doing that. Okay, thank you.
So moving on in the agenda, we have no presentations or delegations this evening, no items for consideration. And then 6 consent items. We're looking for a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the minutes from February 3rd. Do I have a mover? Greg, and a seconder? Chris? Any discussion on the motion items or any additions or errors? Seeing none, we will call a vote, and this vote is not recorded. So we will just, all those in favor? Opposed? None? Excellent. Okay, that concludes the agenda this evening. Any other items for discussion amongst the committee or any information from staff? Updates, anything at all?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do have some sad news to announce. One of our deputy secretary treasurers, Bryn O'Neill, she's moved on. She is moving on to another planning position. So wish Bryn the best, but I just wanted the committee to be aware of that.
Yeah, thank you for the information. It's been a pleasure having her around. We should also mention, not naming any names, but we are losing one planner, but we've gained 3 baby planners. So we will we look forward to the future of planning and committee of adjustment members. It's strong for sure. So yeah, with that being said, if there's nothing else, anything else? Last chance. Okay, thank you guys again for the time, reviewing the applications and your time this evening.